independent, apolitical, and non-partisan think tank which believes in freedom, democracy, and a world free from conflict. We envisions a world where sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflict are prevented or resolved, and peace is advocated. The Water Policy Center is also an independent non-profit think tank established by the Venu Ganga Foundation in 2014 to present constructive policy proposals and scientific research on water and sustainable development. The Water Policy Center believes that the emerging water crisis across the world is the result of the lack of management rather than short rainfall. Therefore, effective management of water resources and constructive policy solutions are the need apart. The Water Policy Center is a transdisciplinary cutting-edge research center, combines policy and science to produce sustainable solutions to the water crisis. The center is guided by an advisory board comprising members of national and international. The objectives of the center is to explore research-based analysis and constructive solutions to the policy challenges in the thrust area of the center. Climate change is also one of the major research centers for NIAC. Today's program is going to be moderated by Dr. Saraswati Uni. Dr. Saraswati Uni is a distinguished fellow at the Water Policy Center. She is researching and mobilizing resources on water, food, energy nexus. She has been engaged in teaching and research for over 32 years in the capacity of Associate Professor and Head Department of Political Science at NES Ratnam College, Mumbai. Dr. Saraswati has been awarded a PhD from the University of Mumbai for her research on energy and policy in India. Dr. Uni is a member of various prestigious bodies such as the International Political Science Association, European Society for Environment Economics. All India Political Association, Indian Institute for Public Administration, and Indian Political Economy Association. He is also a member of Prayas and Kalpa Pravikas advocacy group in India for energy and environment. She has presented a paper in several national and international conferences in UK, China, Australia, and Portugal. Besides, she has published many research papers in international journals and books. She writes on gender, on energy, governance, and development issues. Dr. Saraswati Uni, please take over and moderate the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, both panelists and participants. The current pandemic confirms that humans are not infallible and communities need to be prepared. Coronavirus outbreak was first reported towards the end of 2019 and was then declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization in the beginning of 2020 worldwide. Countries are responding differently to the virus outbreak. A delay in detection and response has been recorded in the country of origin, which I'm not mentioning for reasons of controversy, as Nepal and India are having trouble with this particular country. So, a delay in detection and response has been recorded in the country of origin as well as in other major countries, which led to an overburdening of the local health systems. On the other hand, some other countries have put in place effective strategies to contain the infection and have recorded a very low number of cases since the beginning of the pandemic. Restrictive measures like social distancing, lockdown, case detection, isolation, contact tracing, and quarantine of an exposed person have become the most efficient actions to control the disease spread. In this webinar, organized jointly by the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and the Water Policy in India, we hope to have a fruitful discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on the environment and the lessons learned from the pandemic. Our panelists comprise environment scientists, technocrats with expertise in climate change, and researchers with interest in international trade and development. Let me give a very brief introduction and give you the statistics as on 4th we had 6,109,746 coronavirus cases, and we had 388,616 deaths. It has affected 213 countries and territories. As far as the impact of COVID-19 is concerned, while focus is now on addressing the immediate health, economic, and social impacts, we need to understand future implications of the crisis on wider issues, including migration, environment, and climate change. Many countries have adapted their migration policies to deal with COVID-19, for instance, by granting temporary residency to immigrants to ensure that migrants can access health services. But in the long run, different programs can be implemented, such as the scaling back, potential scaling back or suspension even of immigration and asylum programs, including humanitarian visa processing, family reunification, and asylum registration, or the suspension of services such as voluntary returns, to basically ensure vulnerable mobile groups, by which I mean migrant groups, are not further marginalized. Then, as far as environmentally fragile areas are concerned, COVID-19 is spreading to areas that are environmentally fragile and vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. These areas are also often affected by conflict, poverty, high rate of forced displacement, and very fragile health systems. The consequences of COVID-19 add a new layer of vulnerability on the already fragile populations. In some contexts, choices need to be made between respecting social distancing order and protecting people against disasters, as both can be mutually exclusive. We are likely to see similar situations in the coming months. Hence, the mobility dimensions of the current COVID-19 crisis might also create opportunities for organizations such as NIICE and the Water Policy Center to strengthen our advocacy efforts, particularly for these populations for whom immobility equals increased vulnerability. Thirdly and lastly, as far as climate change is concerned, the current economic situation has led to a temporary reduction of greenhouse gas emission. However, it is clear that climate change is a long-term transformation that cannot be solved on the basis of ad hoc measures. This pandemic also highlights the fact that the world can learn from the current crisis and develop global, radical, and collaborative action on climate change. Also, the current crisis has encouraged systemic changes enacted by governments, private sector, and individuals by adopting practices like we have in India, such as lockdown, work from home, and social distancing. The way forward, historically, global crises offer the opportunity for positive societal and economic changes as we learn to think and act differently when faced with immense disruptions, even as we fully acknowledge the negative impacts of the current crisis. We, as advocacy groups, can try to propose rather innovative migration programs that support health, migration, and climate change actions. So let us begin our webinar with each speaker speaking for 15 minutes. May I now ask Mr. Ganesh Shah, former Minister of Environment and Technology, Nepal, to make his presentation. Will Aruna give a brief bio of Mr. Ganesh? Aruna, do you have it ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Sir, just a minute. I would like Aruna to introduce you.
Sir, ma'am, as we have short time, so sir can start with.
Okay, let him start. Or I can read.
Yeah, you can. Please give it.
Mr. Ganesh Shah is a politician from Nepal and former Minister for Environment, Science and Technology. He is in the standing committee member of Nepal Communist Party. Mr. Shah is a mechanical engineer by profession and received his MTech from Patrice Lumumba People's Friendship University of Russia in 1973. Mr. Shah is a very big advocate of climate change issues in Nepal and has been quoted in various media outlets during his time as a minister. Mr. Shah is known for being one of the most technology-savvy politicians in Nepal. Over to Mr. Shah.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. It is very nice to welcome all the distinguished scholars, researchers, activists in today, the very imminent day, the World Environment Day, which is being celebrated since last more than 3 decades, I think, you see, when the UN decided to cope on it. You know that with the environment, every year the world is celebrating the World Water. I will just go briefly first. A little bit might be we are from the Asian country in India and Nepal. So all of you know that in I say spirituality sometimes. I will take sometimes on our ancient culture and our you say religious books and others, that the water usage were dealt by the Shiva. So I say so many times in my life activities that now water, where is there is a water, there is a life. There is no life without the water. So that's why the life is due to the water. That's why our in the culture or Oriental culture, you see, we all the time respect water. And that's why the god Shiva has been known not only the god, but he is known as the Devokadev Mahadev. So those persons who are working in the field of water, in any part of the water, which is the policy making, which is the science and technology, which is the advocacy, whatever component you are working, you are the great person. So humanity will respect, will remember you. In the coming days, our future generation will say, you are the people who drafted such a big policy. You are the researcher who do the research in this sort. You are the scientists who make our water treatments, controlling the water pollutions, you see. You are the scientists who make the climate change. What you told, madam, were talking about the relation between the climate change and the migration issue, you see. So there's a lot of issues that come center to the water because our life, livelihood, everything is depending on the water. And what you know, all of we have seen this pandemic, but we all of have been forecasting from a few years that if there will be a world war, there will be war for the water. I see in Nepal, though it is a rich in the water, we say, but still the collaboration between the two countries, or 3 countries of the region, because we are the water tower of Asia, and on this Himalaya water, near about 70 to 80 million populations livelihood is dependent. So there is a big need of cooperation between all these 3 countries, especially Nepal, India, and Bangladesh, for this water sharing, water conservation, or climate change issue on the regional level and on the international level also. Because we all the time when we talk about the climate change issue, we say somebody is doing the greenhouse emission and our water resources is melting, you see. There's just so many issues, the glaciers melting, others issues, the scientific data. So first of all, I will just draw attention that how the COVID has impacted on the water. What the first message of the COVID is what you say, this is the hand washing, you see. We have been talking so many times, you see, we have been for the years advocating for the hand washing, you see. But only this COVID has make everybody that how important is the water. If there is no water, you cannot wash your hands. So, yeah, and they say several times hand washing, you see. And even the Amitabh Bachchan, who saw all the dignitaries from Prime Minister to head of the state, head of the governments, everybody is talking If you are at any media, you will see everybody is talking this is hand washing time, you see. But when you say washing, it means water. So every drops of waters is valuable. Water is the precious resources. Water is the blood circulation of the earth. So all these things, I think three things I will empathize. First, I will empathize what you are doing on the policy. How our policy is going to first the conservation of the water. Every drops of water which comes on the earth must be used for the humanity, and then it should be only go to the ocean. So water conservation, how we are thinking on the rainwater harvesting, you see, how we are going the optimum use of the water in the irrigation, in our drinking water supply system, all these things, you see. So all these integrated policy on the conservation, how if I conserve the water is going to pay for the payment for the ecosystems, you see. So all these policy has to be worked on the three stages. First is on the international level. That is on the level where we are working on the regional level between all these SAARC countries, on the all BIAN or what you call it, you see. So this is one component. Another component on the national level. And the third is on the local level. Lastly, you see how the urbanization is going ahead. So first, it is very, very important to work on the policy issues with the scientific based data. So there is a big need of exchange of the, how is this weather forecasting is changing, you see, how it is going to impact all these things, you see, our hydrological data, all these things in the coming generation. So first is the policy. Second is we must have to have a, what I call the track to science diplomacy. There has to be a scientific cooperation in the field of the water, whether it is water for the drinking purpose, whether it is water for the irrigation purpose, water for the industrial purpose, water for the recreation, or water for the transport. So all these sections has to be integrated policies, and integrated, I'd say, scientific and technical collaboration and cooperation is very, very important in these days. Because now we have to develop a technology which is using the less water for the more food. How you are going to reuse of the water. All this has become put a big challenge. So all these academicians, all your scholars, all our researchers who are working in the water sectors has to work with a very interdisciplinary it has become. You see, hydrologists, climatologists, new subjects are coming. All this because the urbanization is increasing. Our water demand is increasing, but water stress is day by day increasing. So to fill this gap, we have to do a collaborative approach. And lastly, there is a big need how we are going to invest in this water sector, water resource management, because there is a fragmented investment, you see. So that's why I'm talking to on the high level, on the so many level, that when you're talking about the transboundary issues, we especially when you talk about the India, Nepal, we say COVID, the people is migration one issue. But our relationship related with the water, you see. Because from the Bay of Bengal, it evaporates, it goes to the Himalaya, then it comes back and again go to the ocean. So this water cycle has to be in the coming days. In the coming days, we have to study on these things. So I thank you very much, the organizers, and I am very happy that a lot of young generation I see is working. A lot of research and academicians are working that. And I propose that if we can do in the coming future, what I call it a water science summit. Because on the water politics, a lot of things have been discussed. But the water scientist meet of the regions has not held, so far I know. ICIMOD has been working a little on it. I think we must do a scientist meet from the different sectors. What is the water pollution sectors, what is the hydrology, meteorology, glaciers, all these water scientists has to come and meet and discuss about the future strategy, how we are going to do all these things. So thank you very much for giving the opportunity. I just will be apologizing because I have another today is a very important day. You see, Environment Day, everybody is telling, sir, please come for a few minutes also. So I will be taking leave by 3 Nepali times, and if I am free early, I will join you because I like to listen all these eminent researchers and persons. So thank you very much for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesha. Can you wait for just a few minutes? People are allowed to ask questions right now. We can take about 3 or 4 questions. If anybody wants to ask questions, they may do.
Hello.
Right now.
Hello. Good afternoon. Hello. Am I audible?
Ganesh, can you
Hello.
hear him? Can you identify yourself? Can you
Yeah, myself, Dr. Saditya Tiwari. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Mr. Ganesh,
Hello, sir?
can you hear him?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Tiwari.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very good evening. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, you are talking about water, how water is important in our in our ecosystem, right, sir?
Yes.
But we the people forgot that how we have to use water, how, and government don't you think that government should take initiatives how water can preserve in very good manner? Otherwise, in the future, those are the future generation will come, they will blame us that all of you are nothing doing anything for sir.
Okay, next question, please.
Yeah, and if they will answer all the questions together. So if anyone else has a question, please ask. Does anybody else want to ask a question? Okay, I think there are no questions coming forward. Can I also comment on this? It's not exactly a question. Mr. Ganesh, I would also like to say, respond to what Mrs. Ajid Ali said, research scholar Ajid Ali from Delhi University, saying that the dependence on government, over-dependence on government is exactly the main problem now. Okay, because we have to look at it from a community-based approach, and we have to look at things from a community initiative. Everything cannot be done by the government. The government needs to lay the foundation, declare the policy, but without community involvement, as we all know, nothing can work, particularly in water conservation and usage. So I feel the community is where our attention should be. So, Mr. Ganesh, you can respond to that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tiwari and Madam, for these things. I will put because I already told these our relations. Because water for the future generation has to be conserved. You see, even you know that even we say sometimes we have feed the stomach of the people when you have to use the overuse of the groundwater, but the earth stomach has become empty. So we must have to start think a policy. So what I've told that one word, that every drops of water counts. So every drops of water which comes on the earth must be used properly. Say we must work out a detailed program, what I call on the rainwater harvesting. Why we should do the water management, what you call the smart water management, so that our future generation will not blame us, you see. Yeah, what I'm talking before is spirituality, you see. I remember in my childhood, if you make a pond, you being respected. You see, there is a big festival for the water conservation. You see, now the people are, filling the ponds and the lakes and doing all these things. So this is what I call this watershed management or water conservation. All these things has to be integrated in the different places to be worked out. Water for the future generation, it must because our population, you see, the world, even this generation, every year, when I was in my childhood, we were talking, the Nepal generation was 1 crore. Now it is going to be 3 crore. Population within the last 50, 60 years has been triple times. So for the generation, and it is not only for the drinking, it is for the irrigation, for the food. You see, it is for the other resources. Water pollution is the another aspect which is. What another speaker asked about the community level, you see. I am raising, you see, when the Lalu Yadav was the chief minister, even in the inauguration of one of the components, because there should be no talk only Delhi to Kathmandu or Delhi to Dhaka or Dhaka to Kathmandu, but there should be a talk on the water boarding. The Kosi waterside effects, it does not affect the Bihar people. Say, Gandak water is good to the Lucknow people. So, different all these river basins, what I said, the trans-boundary issues has to be discussed on the G2G level, on the bordering area or the bordering district, bordering provinces, even we have done now provinces. And at the same time, I already told that it must be discussed on the scientific level also. There is already a joint committee on the water for Nepal and other countries. But there is no, I raised this issue when I was the minister in Delhi, when at the science ministers meeting of the SAARC countries, that a scientific strong committee has to be worked on the water, because it is a climate change impact. I don't know, we don't know what will be the climate change impact in 5 years or 10 years, how the COVID is going to change all these things. So I think it has to be all it's on the different level. And here I think this types of dialogue, what is the technology, given the privilege also, that we can now have the dialogue more and more on the water issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. Mr. Ganesh has emphasized on the importance of water consumption at the national and local level. He has emphasized technically integrated collaboration, and he has limited the fragmented approach that now exists, and he has suggested the whole of a water science sub. Thank you very much, Mr. Ganesh. Mr. Bavaskar, would you like to thank him, because he's going to leave now? And can we move on to the next speaker?
Yes, I would like to thank Mr. Ganesha, the minister, for giving the idea of this water scientists for
Science Summit.
Yeah, it's a really great idea, and we will really think with Dr. Pramod, and we will go with that.
Okay, so can we move on to the next speaker? Will be Dr. Deepa Manoj, Associate Professor, Department of Environmental Science, NES Ratnam College, Mumbai. Dr. Deepa, Professor, Dr. Deepa. Dr. Deepa is an Assistant Professor in charge of the Department of Environmental Science. She's among the 500 world's most influential ethnobotanists, ranked by the International Agency of Standards and Ratings. Dr. Deepa has more than 15 years of experience in teaching and research in various colleges in Mumbai. She has designed 40 science experiments, children, and has conducted 4 minor research projects funded by the University of Mumbai. Currently, she is researching on the conservation of indigenous knowledge related to medicinal plants. She has also published as many as 18 research papers. So now I would like Deepa Manoj, Dr. Deepa, to make a presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Happy Environment Day to all of you. As everyone knows that UN has declared it as biodiversity as a theme for Environment Day. FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, had declared as a slogan also, that is protecting plant, protecting life. So in this context of COVID-19, what I have to say, or else what I have observed, is that there are a lot of positive changes had happened to our environment. We have seen around that the air becomes so clear because of the limited economic activity, and water get purified, and the wild animals are getting its habitat back. So many positive things had happened, but it can't continue. And what we can do for continuing this kind of positive effects, what had happened now because of this lockdown or else COVID-19 pandemic. So here, we can say that only one thing that we have to focus is that go back to nature, right? In all our activity or all our functions should not get disconnected with the nature. We don't have to keep any social distancing with the nature, and we have to live with, and then we have to consider the healthy environment is also very much necessary. That is what we can understand from this COVID-19 outbreak when it had happened. We are all very sad to be inside, but at the same time, so many videos are there in the social media showing that how the nature is enjoying without any human intervention. So here the focus is that how can we get back the nature with us in its full quality. Our Prime Minister, when he was addressing the nation, that time he had mentioned one thing, to follow guidelines of Ayush, Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, homeopathic and naturopathic guidelines, which is given in their website. What it shows. So we are sure about that modern medicines is not having any solution for such pandemic, and not yet discovered or else invented any vaccines. So in that period of time, we have to depend on nature and nature products for our protection. Even the leader of the nation himself is saying that to the citizens, right? So that shows that how we where we have to go. Not only that, United Nations in its various forums also, they are saying that how can we incorporate the environment functions to the economic activity. Very conveniently, we are forgetting everything, focusing only on the development. So this time we can rethink about all this and utilize this thing. How can we incorporate this environment, healthy environment functions or activities with this economic activity? One way is that what I have experienced during my research, what I have to say that indigenous people's knowledge can be taken for such healthy activities of development. Indigenous people, when we say that they are the local people, they are the real custodians of the nature and nature products. They have tremendous knowledge about the nature products. They are utilizing it for their livelihood, and they are using their sustenance is to that, right? So here the how indigenous knowledge can be utilized for our protection, that we can think about. At this point of time, we can get the knowledge from them for curing such kind of diseases and protect ourselves from such kind of diseases which can happen in future, and immunity boosting medicines we can find out from them. All we can do, but it is not so easy. Out of my experience, I'm saying, I was doing research on one medicinal plant which is endangered, which I could find in some pockets or some areas of Western Ghats only. When we are there to collect those medicinal plants, and we have to ask the local people regarding that, and very few people will be so cooperative. Others were not ready to even tell the name of that medicinal plant. They believe that if they take the name of that plant, the effect of that plant will go. So they were not ready to do that. In such cases, it is very difficult for us to access the information regarding anything. And so here the solution is that take them into confidence. We have to make them understand that we are not going to exploit their habitat, their products with which they are living, and we have to share the benefit with them. United Nations had given the guidelines for the same. They have a forum for protecting indigenous knowledge. In that also it is saying that we can give the benefit whatever we are gaining from their knowledge to them, and then we can work for their advancement. One thing is that very positive way of approach, positive way of protection we can take. That means when we are collecting any information from them, for example, if we are extracting any medicines out of the plant which they are showing to us, then the intellectual property right can be implemented, and we can give them the rights on that. So without their consent, nobody can exploit it. Not only that, there is one another approach also. It's a kind of defensive one. Unauthorized people cannot go to their habitat and cannot collect anything without their consent. They are keeping up protection for the nature and their products. So that way, there are two types of approaches can be there. Even United Nations had given it in our different conventions and forums that we can apply. One we can say that there is one another approach that everyone is accepting it, that is access and benefit sharing approach. You can access it, the tribals or the indigenous people can access that area, and the benefit out of it will be shared with them. So access and benefit sharing approach also will be very helpful for us to get the knowledge from them. So the basic thing that I want to say is that going back to nature only solution now, and how can we go back to nature? And there is a need of connection. We have already disconnected with the nature. I mean, almost, not entirely. If we entirely have disconnected, we can't survive. So almost we have disconnected. We can say that connecting link is this indigenous people. So connect with them, incorporate them with our, take them into confidence, and through them we can access the information, whatever is there hidden in the nature, take them for our benefit, and then protect the environment for everyone, for the future generations especially. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is what I have to tell on this Environment Day. Thank you very much. Thank you organizers for selecting such a very nice theme for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa. I would also like to mention to all the viewers that Dr. Deepa was honored with the Joseph Lister Award in ethnobotany by the Journal of Ethnobiology and Traditional Medicine, United States of America. So are there any questions for Dr. Deepa? We are ready to take questions now, and then we'll move on to the next speaker, Ms. Shreya Sinha. Any questions?
Is it possible to take all the questions at the end?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. So shall we go to the next speaker then?
Yes.
Shall we go on to Ms. Shreya Sinha?
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah. Just a minute. I'll just give a brief introduction.
Yeah, sure.
Shreya Sinha, welcome. Shreya Sinha is a research associate with NIIC Nepal. Her research interests include defense and security policy of the European Union, transatlantic security partnership, political violence, and non-traditional security studies such as terrorism. She is a doctoral candidate at the Center for European Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, India. Sinha holds a Master of Philosophy and Master of Arts degree from Spain University. She completed her bachelor's degree in political science and history from St. Stephen's College, Delhi. She has been awarded the JRF Fellowship in Political Science by the UGC. She has published papers and articles on different issues and has participated at several conferences. So your presentation.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the introduction. Very good afternoon to all the distinguished panelists and all the participants who are attending the event today. As ma'am has introduced, my name is Shreya Sinha, and the topic that I'm speaking on today is COVID-19 and the impact it has had on climate change. So as we know, coronavirus pandemic has been the most crucial health calamity in the last 1 century. And if we talk from the security point of view, it has also been a very important security challenge since the end of World War. Since I come from an international relations background, I would like to emphasize on the security part that I have just mentioned. So before the Cold War, and since after the World War II and before the Cold War and during the Cold War, security was mostly seen from a nation-state perspective. It was seen from a very military-based approach. But since the end of Cold War, we see that there are a number of non-traditional security threats. Non-state actors have come and they are also seen as security challenges. So from an IR perspective, a public health calamity like COVID-19 as well as climate change are also seen as security threats. And these two we see are also intrinsically linked because COVID-19 has had a very big impact on climate change. Since we know most of the regions across the world were locked down and they were facing restrictions, many places have opened up, but many regions are still locked down. So human mobility was very much reduced. Shops were closed, industries were closed, and the transport sector and the aviation industry were adversely hit. So as a result, carbon emissions had gone down drastically. And this also had a very big impact on air pollution levels, as we know. So if I speak about New Delhi, the city that I live in, which was very infamous for the air pollution levels in the past few years, here also air pollution had reduced by almost 49% in the past 3 months when the lockdown started all the time from March till now. And in China also, in just 4 weeks of the lockdown, air pollution came down by 25%. And if I would like to quote this data from International Energy Agency, if we talk about on a global scale, carbon emissions had reduced by 1 billion tons from 2019 till now. And that's a huge figure. We know that. So we see that the carbon emissions have reduced because of all these industries being severely hit. And another point I would like to make is that carbon emission and CO2 emissions, as well as CO emissions, which is a principal greenhouse gas also, these emissions are related with the GDP of the country, the gross domestic product. They're directly proportional. When the GDP of a world is increasing, then carbon emissions are also increasing. And we know that because of all these industries being locked down right now, and they were in the past few months, we know that the world is also ready to face a very severe recession. People are saying that it's probably going to be as bad as the Great Depression of 1929. So if the world GDP is going to take a hit, then so is the carbon emission. So in a way, it's going to be good for climate. I mean, not for economy, but for climate, it's definitely going to be a good thing. Next, we know that 60% of the energy demand is actually coming from the carbon emissions. 60% are actually coming from energy consumption, which is oil and natural gas. So now that we know that there's 6% lesser amount of energy is going to be used this year as compared to the previous year. So carbon emissions will also reduce because of that. And it's going to be a very positive development towards climate change. So if we see in a post-COVID world, when coronavirus will probably be receding from the world and people will be coming back on track and economies will be recovering, there'll be two major trends. One major trend is that the oil and natural gas sector will be struggling to recover, just like all other sectors of the economy. The demand and supply has reduced for oil and natural gas because aviation industry and transport industry is hit. And the second trend is that we see the transition towards renewable energy is more smooth because renewable energy in the past few years has become very much cheaper and accessible than before. And we know as a result of the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015, most of the countries are a party to this. And an important guideline of this agreement has been to transition towards renewable energy, reduce carbon emissions. So in accordance with this, if we see as it is, the energy security is going to be threatened, global energy sector is going to be in turmoil. So as a result, more and more countries will want to transition towards renewable energy. We know for India also we have a target of attaining 170 megawatts of renewable energy by 2022. So since we already have these targets in hand and all these trends which are going to happen as a result of this pandemic, we are probably going to have a more smoother transition towards renewable energy. At this point, I would like to move on to the next part of my presentation, where I'm saying that all these changes, though are positive, we need to know that they are very small as well as temporary, because these carbon emissions have reduced because of the depressed economic activity. And it is not a feasible strategy and a long-term strategy to keep the world's economy repressed for so long, because eventually the lockdown is bound to open and the economies will attempt to come back on track, and as a result, carbon emissions will rise again. So what do we do? What are the lessons that we are learning from this pandemic? So I think what this pandemic is providing to us in a very permanent way is actually a very loud wake-up call, that the governments and citizens, as well as the non-state actors, civil society, they take cognizance of the fact that the climate has been in big trouble. It is a very long impending global crisis. And even though this pandemic is offering very short-term results, we can probably take lessons from this pandemic to adopt a more long-term approach towards climate change and how to tackle it. So in this context, the World Economic Forum has come out with a number of policy recommendations on how economies can be rebuilt after coronavirus, in a post-COVID world, but at the same time have a green focus, how the economies can be reconstructed in a very sustainable manner. So they talk about very general things like how we can have public health facilities and public transport facilities to have a more greener focus, how we can switch to renewable, how we can use solar energy to meet our day-to-day needs. But a very important recommendation that the World Economic Forum has come out with, which I found very interesting, has been how to lay the groundwork for a digital future. Because having a digital future will eventually allow these organizations to promote work from home even more, even after this pandemic is over. So that a few percentage of the employees can continue working from home, and this can really help air pollution and eventually global warming and climate change. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that all the countries need to make a very coordinated effort to tackle this, because the pandemic is only going to give us short-term results. What we really need to do is have a long-term approach. So the post-pandemic recovery should have a very holistic approach. It should not be only economic in nature. It should look towards building the economy of the country, of the world. All the countries need to make a very coordinated effort to tackle this, because the pandemic is only going to give us short-term results. What we really need to do is have a long-term approach. So the post-pandemic recovery should have a very holistic approach. It should not be only economic in nature. It should look towards building the economy of the country, of the world, as well as having a sustainable focus. And one example I would like to give while concluding my argument is the example of the European Union, actually. So the European Union recently on 27th May, they have unveiled their recovery package for the member states. And they have said that they are going to attribute $825 billion to economic recovery. And in this recovery plan, they are going to give an equal weightage to climate change as well. That how they can do this recovery in a very sustainable manner, and how they can negate the effects, the negative effects of climate change. So I truly believe that in order to have long-term results in climate change and tackling climate change, all the countries probably need to learn something, take some hints from the leadership that the EU is providing to lead towards a truly carbon neutral economy and a carbon neutral infrastructure. And probably only a global and consistent action can help us in tackling climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya. The floor is now open to questions. Shreya will now take questions. If anybody would like to ask questions, do so. Otherwise, we will move on to the next speaker, Gautam.
Ma'am, hello.
Yeah. Now, we will take all the questions later at the end of the session, all the presentation. After all the presentation, we will take all the questions.
Thank you, Shreya.
Hello. Hello.
Who's this? We are taking questions later. Okay. Okay. So we'll move on to Asmita Gautam. Is she there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So Asmita Gautam, is a visiting fellow at Nepal Institute. She focuses on non-traditional security issues like cybersecurity, internet governance, international trade and development issues. She holds a master's in economics specialization.
Still not on. Can it be done or not, or should I start?
Yes, Miss Asmita, just share your screen. Hello.
Yeah, I can share it now. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, yes,
we can see your screen.
All right. So thank you for that introduction. And well, I'm starting with the presentation now. Well, many people are wondering when life will get back to normal after the COVID-19 crisis. And at this point, we should rather be asking, can we use this opportunity to learn from our mistakes and build something better? And today, I am going to talk about the COVID-19 and the nature trade-off paradigm. Well, the persistent drumbeat of positive tests and reported deaths in the world due to novel coronavirus has created widespread concerns in the world. Nepal is also starting to suffer from the most abrupt and widespread cessation of economic activity due to the outbreak of the virus. The outbreak of epidemics like COVID-19 reveals in itself the fundamental tenets of the trade-off we consistently face. And the trade-off starts because humans have unlimited needs and the planet has limited capacity to satisfy them. So while researching on this trade-off, I came across the interview of Pushpam Kumar. He's the chief environmental economist at the United Nations Environment Program. And in this interview, he explained the concept of trade-off and the use of the trade-off paradigm in navigating the relationship between the humans and nature. So I want to give a small intro regarding the trade-off in itself. So trade-off analysis, it covers the positive and negative impacts of human interventions on nature and tries to observe the ways a situation changes when there is more of one thing and less of another. So when we talk about COVID-19, it has been attributed to human inferences such as deforestation, biodiversity loss, and has reported to millions of deaths in the world. I mean, thousands of deaths in the world. So subsequent lockdown, at the same time, what is happening is many people are dying prematurely, but at the same time, a trade-off has been demonstrated because the nature is healing itself. So because of this, a trade-off is seen between the consumption-driven society and resiliency of the nature and ecosystems. So that's what I'm going to present in this presentation. And moving on, I have created a few pictures like showing before and after of a few countries, starting with Nepal. This is a glimpse from Kathmandu. And moving on, we have a satellite image of India. And here, the third picture shows how the average AOD changes in the year 2020 compared to the average of 2016 to 2019. And I have also collected the figures for other countries. This is for China. Italy, again, you can see the difference from 2019 to 2020 again. And this is for US. Now, Now I can divide the trade-off categories into three different subtopics, and starting with the first topic. The first topic is basically explaining mutually effective relationship between people and nature. So we know that natural habitats are being reduced and causing species to live in closer quarters than ever to one another and to humans. And some people opt to invade forest and wild landscapes due to business interests, and other end of the socio-economic spectrum are forced to search for resources for survival. So there we say that we, the humans, damage the ecosystems, risking the viruses from animals finding new host in us. So given our interconnected and ever-changing world with air travel, wildlife marketing, and a changing climate, the potential for future serious outbreaks remains significant. And pandemics are therefore a hidden side effect that I'm trying to show in this presentation, and a hidden side effect of economic development and inequalities that can no longer be ignored. So in other words, just as carbon is not the cause of climate change, it is human activity, not nature, because that causes the pandemics in general. Now we talked about the hidden side effects. I'll be moving with a few examples. So this is the side effect of the pandemic, because Visiting Nepal 2020, as you all know, has been cancelled, and we were aiming to attract 2 million foreign tourists through this campaign, and it has been cancelled. Similarly, I think most of you are already aware that the Nepali economy is dependent on the remittance, and over-reliance on the remittance can be detrimental to the economy right now, because we have millions of unemployed nationals returning home from abroad. And this is the unemployment figure. In this unemployment figure, we can see how informal economy as a percent of the total employment has been severely affected in low income and lower middle income countries over here. Yeah. So this is the effect on unemployment. Can you please mute moving on? I'm going to talk about appreciating the limits to which humans can push nature before the impact is negative. So as the World Economic Forum's report, risk rising, over half of the world's GDP is highly and moderately dependent on nature. Nature provides businesses and governments with vast opportunities. For every dollar spent on nature restoration, at least $9 of economic benefits can be expected. Additionally, a recent report by Food and Land Use also showed how using farm and food produce in the right way can lead to $4.5 trillion a year in new business opportunities. So this is a high time for us to recognize this fact and understand that our limits must be embraced by our consumption and production aspiration. And in dealing with the potential economic fallout, governments and businesses could use this opportunity to align economic models with our planetary boundaries. And this can be done by addressing some of the most untenable realizations of globalization. For example, ensuring significant biodiversity in our calorie mix, and prioritizing local sustainable produce. It can lead to resilience, and transition can also be formed so that we can move to renewable energy and tap into locally available wind and solar assets that could reduce the carbon footprints of industrial activities. And moving on, the crisis has also illustrated the potential of political will and collective action. So we know how quickly nature can heal itself, as we saw in the previous images. We can also see how at this point a momentum has to develop so that we can observe the future shock and prevent future shocks from happening. So aligning the planetary boundaries. In order to align to the planet boundaries, we have to respect what we already have. And we know that the food calorie produced today, half of it goes uneaten. And reducing this loss and waste is a critical step towards generating enough food for a population set to reach more than 9 billion by 2050. So in order to reach this goal, I think the major step will be like the basic steps. It will be like improving storage methods, redistributing food, creating food date labels, and reducing portion sizes and launching consumer awareness campaign. And this is a glimpse of Kathmandu that you can see, and the previous glimpse was for India. Now moving on. Now the question is, how do we prioritize local sustainable produce? So local agricultural practices has grown like in recent years, and we can, but in order to augment it even further, we can see that there are many uncultivated areas near the farms, including trees, shrubs or grasses at the edge of the crop fields. So what we can do is, by fostering biodiversity and providing habitat for pollinators and other beneficial wildlife, such as birds, bats, bees, uncultivated areas can boost farm productivity and reduce cost. Secondly, I'm going to talk about digital entrepreneurship. So recently I saw a trend where most of the people, I'm not sure if this is applicable in most of the areas, but at least in Kathmandu, I saw that the street vendors were marginalized. Their produce was not being bought because people were scared, like, that the person might be infected of COVID-19. So I think at this point, the major role can be played by digital entrepreneurship. And apart from that, we also recognize the fact that farmers in India and Nepal are very small plots of land, and they don't have direct access to the market. So if we create a platform through which they can submit their produce and the produce can be introduced in the market, then it will create a massive production gain not only for the farmers, but also the network that we are trying to create over here. So sellers who do not know how to use smartphone or devices or social media can be taught how to use it for the benefit of their business. So a starting point can be to initiate pickup and delivery of product supplied by sellers over a phone call. And by taking one step at a time, other technical skills can be provided to the micro entrepreneurs so that it will be easier for them to adapt themselves to the technology-enabled business model. And similarly, we can also move to digital literacy, where digital platforms can focus on transformational upskilling, and both online and offline guidance can be provided to the micro entrepreneurs, like if they have to call, or we can also create peer coaching forums to provide necessary technical skills so that micro entrepreneurs in the digital platforms can understand the ways to conduct the businesses digitally. And with this platform, the market participants can be brought together. That will create a network effect and shift the cost and risk burden from the small businesses to the network. And this will also allow the platform to use cloud, automation, social media platforms, and artificial intelligence for the integration of businesses process to provide services on demand. And lastly, I'm going to talk about renewable energy. Nepal aims to achieve universal access to clean, reliable, and affordable energy solutions by 2030. And it is expected to reduce dependence on traditional and imported energy by increasing access to renewable energy. So what can we do in order to reach this goal? First of all, solar energy, like that's the most obvious thing. Private installations of solar panels are more frequent in urban areas, but it's relatively limited in the rural areas. So that can be a starting point for us. Similarly, on average, Nepal has 6.8 sunshine hours every day, which is very good because we can create an intensity of solar radiation ranging from 3.9 to 5.1 kWh per meter square, which will create connection of estimated 2100 megawatts. So I think that will be a goal in itself. And similarly, solar and wind energy resource assessment can be made to map the wind potential in Nepal. And with our wind potential available in the mountain region, I think that's something that we can really focus upon. And finally, we all know that there is a need for collaboration. We need to identify the stakeholders. We need to estimate the potential gains and losses. And we need to determine the role of private and public stakeholders in the platform and anticipate governance structures to influence outcomes. And on an end note, we all know that we have to take nature into account, stop harmful environmental practices, and if there is anything that can benefit from countries to countries, then this is a great time to cross-pollinate knowledge across the
তারপরে
have to
তোমার
end
হচ্ছে
with
ওদের
COVID-19
ক্লাস
and
নিলাম,
nature
দুপুরবেলা
and
খাওয়া দাওয়া করলাম,
social
খেয়ে
limits
দিয়ে
of
এই শুয়ে আছি। আজকে
thank you very
একদমই ছবি তোলা হয়নি, দেখি কালকে সকালে, কালকে কোনো ক্লাস রাখবো না,
হ্যালো স্যার
কাল
প্লিজ
Others,
সকাল
please
দিয়ে
mute.
একটু
Others,
বেরিয়ে
please
যাবো।
mute.
খেতে রয়েছে তো, কাল সকালবেলা উঠবো, সকাল দিয়ে ছবি তুলতে বেরিয়ে যাবো।
স্যার প্লিজ
যতটা যা
মিউট।
হয় একে
Thank you
মোটামুটি
so
ছবি
much.
তুলে ওই 11টার দিকে বাইরে ঢুকে যাবো। বলো।
Yeah, I'm done with the presentation. Hello.
কাল শনিবার।
So, Asmita, are you done with the presentation?
Yeah,
কাল
I'm
স্যাটারডে।
done. There was some disturbance. I don't know.
বুঝতে পেরেছো?
If it's possible now, Aruna? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes,
So
yes.
you will have to also unmute Asmita because she'll be taking the questions. We are going for questions for everyone right now. Okay, so the session is now open to questions. You may address your questions to Dr. Deepa, also to Asmita, and also to Shreya. Okay, so are there any questions for Asmita? I can see a lot of comments saying that they appreciated Asmita's presentation, but I guess nobody wants to ask any questions because you said it all.
Thank you, everybody, whoever commented.
Okay. So I will just, can I make 2 comments on your presentation?
Yes, please.
It was, of course, an excellent presentation. Basically, I'm not making the commentation, comments on your presentation. I just wanted to point to what Bhutan has been doing on for sustainable technologies. And we can, I think we all know that as far as water conservation and use of renewable technologies concerned, Bhutan has been one of the best examples among the SAARC countries.
Yes.
And yeah. So secondly, I also want to point out to the use of mobile technology in Bangladesh. Okay, it may or may not be a surprise to many of you that Bangladesh is the most advanced in the use of mobile technologies by marginalized sections.
Hello.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a question.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, this is to Shreya. Hi, ma'am. So I just had this one question. I don't know if I'm very right in what I'm going to ask, but then, so with this pandemic, you've seen that the lockdown, etc., and that has caused a lot of labor to migrate back into the rural areas. So because of that, because of their migration back into rural areas, don't you think that that would cause like more of forest clearance and etc., which could actually raise the carbon emissions and stuff?
So who is this question addressed to?
Shreya.
Shreya. Shreya, are you online?
Yeah, just one clarification for the question. Forest clearance because of migrants going back. Can you please elaborate?
I can't hear you, ma'am.
Maybe he's referring to the burning of fuel.
Yeah, burning of fuel, exactly. The burning of fuel and even spaces to live in, etc. Maybe that
Cutting
also can.
of forests.
Yeah, cutting down of forests and etc. So that could also.
Yes, definitely you are absolutely correct. Cutting down of forests is going to lead to a few. So when I made the point that climate change is probably going through a better position right now because of coronavirus, it is because human interaction with nature has reduced to a significant amount. So the net impact on climate change is definitely positive for the time being. But you are absolutely correct. With forest clearances and deforestation of any kind, it is definitely a very negative impact on climate change. And hopefully we will be able to recover from that.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Questions can be addressed to Dr. Deepa, Shreya, as well as to our last speaker. So if there are no questions, then we can move to the vote of thanks.
I think, ma'am, there are some questions in chat box, so we can also go with that questions.
Yeah, we can do that. Well, can you look at the questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, but they're not saying to whom is this question. How the pandemic is going to affect areas with poor mobile technology. Did you see that question? So whom is this question addressed to? Mr. Mohammed Shuja?
Anybody from the present can respond? Anyone? Miss Asmita, Miss Shreya.
I think
Not
Asmita.
What was the question?
Asmita, can you attend this question? How is the pandemic going to affect areas with poor mobile technology?
Success of Jio, which was a massive success in India. So something similar can be created for Nepal too. Like if I have to talk about low-income countries, I think some similar platform can be created for the mobile technology and trying to give and like I talked about, digital literacy. So without digital literacy, it's not possible. Even if we give mobile phones to people, it's not possible for them to use it or use it in the right way, as I have like noted it before. So I think these are the important factors to consider.
Okay.
There is one more question from Saroj, and she's asking how to keep and enhance the positive environmental sustainability impacts long-term in the post-pandemic world.
So who would you like this question to be answered by?
Asmita, yes, Miss Asmita.
Yes, yes. Could you please repeat the question, sir?
How to keep and enhance the positive environmental sustainability impacts long-term in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, so I think I covered this in my presentation as well. So when we talk about sustainable, like we have to manage what we already have instead of trying to focus what we don't. So we can talk about food waste management, like, you know, how to decrease it and how to take the resources that we are wasting to the people who need it at this point. So I think that's one way to go about it. And second factor, in order to enhance the positive, I think renewable energy, that I have already talked about that too. Like we have to use the renewable energy, we have to use the sunlight. So basically it's using the resources that we already have in the limited proportion in such a way that the use does not become negative. We have to be mindful of the limits that the resources have and use it in the right proportion and make sure that it reaches the right people.
There's one more question to Dr. Deepa ma'am. How does COVID-19 affected our biodiversity?
Is it only about zoonosis or something else? He has added one more question.
Yeah. How does COVID-19 affected our biodiversity? Dr. Deepa ma'am.
Dr. Deepa, are you online?
Okay, I think she is not there. Okay.
I think
So questions are over.
we'll answer.
Here also I can't.
I think Deepa ma'am.
Yeah.
Deepa
Is there
is
any
there.
question?
Yeah,
I can't
Deepa
hear
is-
Yes.
it.
Yeah, there is one question. Can you repeat that question? I'm not getting that question.
Yeah. How does COVID-19 affected our biodiversity?
Yeah, that I can see that it's not only zoonosis that we have to think about. We can say the positive effect on biodiversity more than the negative one, right? So the human intervention has reduced a lot. So that is the only one impact we could see immediately. Later on, whatever impact is there on environment, very slow feedback we may get. So right now we can say this much only, a very positive impact is there. The destruction had reduced at least for a little amount, that we can say. That is the one we can claim on the biodiversity side. Otherwise, the same.
Okay, thank you, Deepa. I think.
Hello, ma'am.
There is one more I can see here. Huge
Somebody is
unemployment.
asking.
That's a very
Hello,
general
ma'am.
question that has to be answered
Absorb
by
this,
government. That is a question that has to be addressed by Finance and Industry Minister of Government of India. So I think we'll wait for the next session, because he's asking about unemployment and how government, what kind of policy government needs to take. Shall we wait for the next webinar?
I think somebody is there. Yes, please ask your question. Please unmute your device and then ask question.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I asked a question to Deepa ma'am, which I sent in the chat box.
Okay.
So I want the answer from Deepa ma'am.
Yeah, he's asking. I
yes,
think
yes.
he's asking how to.
Yeah.
How is the
This is my
COVID-19
question.
going to impact our daily lives?
No, this is not my question. I asked you, Deepa ma'am, that already COVID pandemic badly affected our economy, and it may cause of huge unemployment.
Yeah.
But Deepa ma'am has spoken about biodiversity. She has spoken about
I spoke on
and
biodiversity.
indigenous medicines. Do you have any question on that? If you have
No,
questions
sir, no,
on
no,
unemployment and industrialization,
no.
I think you have to wait for another webinar.
Okay, ma'am.
The government we'll have to ask someone from the government to be present. So kindly, please restrict it to the presentation that they made. Deepa has made a presentation on going back to nature. She has spoken about the importance of indigenous medicines. She's made some very interesting observations. I hope you were listening to her, or maybe you can go back to it if you have recorded it. So if you have any questions on that, you may ask.
Okay.
There is one question: how is the COVID-19 going to affect our day-to-day life? I think that is a very general question. Yes. Yes. Any question is there? You can ask directly.
Here there is one question I can see. No reduced ozone emissions during lockdown period. Actually, the studies are going on, right? That is very that's a very suspicious kind of observation we have made in Mumbai. Though the factories and everything is not everything is shut, but the ozone emission is still there, and it is in troposphere mainly, which is actually act as a pollutant. The people are studying in it, and then they want to know the source of it now. I don't know whether anywhere in world it has reported or not, but in Mumbai it has reported ozone in troposphere. That means the lower layer of the atmosphere. That's an interesting question, but there is no answer for that.
Hello, ma'am. I am I analyze this 10 cities, and Mumbai during the lockdown period, Mumbai's ozone emission is decreased, but some cities, 9 cities not decreased, like Delhi, Kanpur, Ludhiana, Hyderabad, and more, Kolkata, more cities.
That's what I'm saying. Studies are going on, I guess. The report I have not read anywhere why it is so.
आज हम क्या करने लग गए थे पहले, आज हम लेट हो गए वैसे, आज हम उठे लेट थे नहीं, वैसे तो उठे तो
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
That's what I'm saying. I could see that in Mumbai, this phenomenon had taken place, that tropospheric ozone, but they are into that kind of studies, but no report has come yet. Or else I have not seen any report on that why it is so. You are saying that in other cities also it is reported. When it was reported last week, only in Mumbai they were saying. So I don't know about the other cities whether the tropospheric ozone is still there and then polluting the air that we are breathing.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I think we should stop this session now. Dr. Pramod is there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Dr. Unni ma'am? Dr. Unni ma'am?
Yeah. She will have to unmute.
Yeah. Dr. Unni ma'am, unmute your device.
Yes, I have unmuted. Yes.
Yeah. You want to say something? Are we just concluding? Then I will go for vote of thanks.
Please conclude.
Okay. On behalf of the Water Policy Center and NIIC, Nepal Institute of International and introducing the theme, she is actually very disciplined, actually academic, and she has planned this session very well and moderated very well. So thank you for accepting this request and moderating the session. I thank all the speakers, Mr. Minister Ganesh Shah, who is the former Minister of the Environment and Science and Technology in Nepal. I thank Ms. Shreya and Ms. Ashmita and Dr. Deepa ma'am for the wonderful, informative and thought-provoking presentation. This discourse actually on this environment is, I think, one of the area which is badly and greatly affected by the coronavirus pandemic, and that's why the issue was important to discuss. So this panelists actually discuss many dimensional aspects of this issue, and that's why I really thank all the speakers and all the presenters for making this session very thoughtful and informative. I thank all the participants. Somehow some technical issue to join the event. As I'm receiving the message, some people are not unable to join this webinar. For those, I apologize for that. For those who joined, those who succeed to join, I thank you for joining the session, and I expect your cooperation and your help in the future for our next event. I'm also thankful to our technical partner, Chetan Yadnik, who is managing this technical issue and the media live. I thank you to him. I thank you our co-partner, NIIC, Nepal Institute of International Cooperation and Engagement, the Dr. Pramod Jaiswal and the entire team of NIIC for joining or collaborating with us for this webinar. And we expect your cooperation and such joint events in the future. I also thank Ms. Aruna on behalf of Water Policy Center, who actually took care of all this matter, who coordinated all the event on behalf of the Water Policy Center, where I was unable to take part of day-to-day matters and discuss with the Dr. Pramod, and she has handled it very well. So I thank to her. Also, I also thanks to my Venuganga Foundation team, my president, and my management team. And once again, I thanks to all of you, co-host, panelists, participants, and all the dignitaries. Thank you for joining, and keep joining, keep cooperating in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Feedback form.
Yeah, we will mail you feedback form.
Okay, sir.
Chetan, please close the meeting.